the Rams, and obviously you guys have to think about how Seattle got to this place. And apparently, I did a 5-minute live without a mic, and nobody could hear me, and no one could hear my points. But the fact of the matter is, if the Seahawks go and win a Super Bowl at Levi Stadium as a San Francisco 49ers fan, I'm going to be pissed. But hopefully, the only benefit of that is it forces John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to actually reevaluate what builds winning teams. And the fact of the matter is, Sam Darnold at 100 million over 2 years is a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. 5 years, 265 million. I don't want to hear about the Brock. We know there's a ton of Brock gobblers, and I won't say the first word of that. And I get it. Like, he's a great guy to root for. The EPA is off the charts. The advanced stats are off the charts. And I actually really like Brock Purdy. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in Kyle's system. But because of John Lynch's flaws and because of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch's inability to build a roster during Brock Purdy's rookie contract and not be able to draft, you have to ace the draft with Brock Purdy making $53 million a year. If they had Sam Darnold on a contract of maybe like, the contract he is on now, they could have more roster flexibility. Now, I know it only goes up to 20% of the cap, and everybody's like, oh, don't worry about it. Brock's not the issue. And he's not the issue, but he is the issue, if it makes sense. Because now you have two teams in the Super Bowl. One has a quarterback on a rookie contract, was able to spend a ton of money on Milton Williams in free agency, and that's the Patriots, right? The other team has Sam Darnold, one of the better quarterbacks in the league, who I think, borderline elite at this point based on the performance today and what he did against San Francisco last week. Great processor. Sure, he has JSN, but great receiver. You have him, and you have him for $100 total million. And you're able to hit on all your draft picks. And this is the issue with the San Francisco 49ers. The Seahawks have aced all of their first and second round picks, right? Byron Murphy, JSN, Devon Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. Reek Woolen was later, but that's just another young guy. Charles Cross, Gray Zabel. I mean, I could go down the list. I already said JSN, I'm pretty sure. Ken Walker. I mean, Zach Charbonnet, who was good until obviously he got hurt. This is something. What is that? Trench play. What were most of those picks? Trenches. Oh my God, what a crazy concept that I don't think Kyle and John have considered. Build the offensive line, build the defensive line. Thank gosh the 49ers drafted some D linemen last year, because it makes me sick that Seattle is now ahead of us. And for the Rams, everybody knew their Achilles heel was their secondary. And I know some people will be like, well, Darnold didn't really do much because the Rams secondary stinks. And we all know that. Your drunk uncle down the street, even if he's 12 beers in and doesn't know where he is, knows that the Rams have no fucking secondary. And that was going to be their Achilles heel if they lost and didn't win a Super Bowl. Everybody knows that. It doesn't take a fucking genius to figure out, excuse my language. But still, it was incredibly impressive what Sam Darnold did. And now you have possibly the worst possible pairing of Super Bowl matchup you could think of for me as a Niners fan. In the Seattle Seahawks, which is my least favorite team in the NFL as a 49ers fan, even more than the Rams. I know the Rams, the last 5-10 years have been a rival of the 49ers, and I don't like them. I like them more than Seattle. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I think their fans are a little bit better and a little bit nicer. I'm not saying Seattle doesn't have bad fans. They obviously have passionate fans, but they were bad for 10 years and they're acting like they're the best team in the world over the last decade. And I'm glad that they have passionate fans. I'm glad that they're able to experience a Super Bowl and go to that, because, Seattle is a great sports town. It just is. They should have never lost their basketball team, but it makes me sick that the 49ers haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 years. And we can't talk shit to Seattle, and we can't talk shit to the Rams, because the fact of the matter is, even though we beat the Rams in the regular season all the time, they beat us in the only game that mattered over the last decade, and that was the NFC Championship game. Jarsky Tart shouldn't be allowed in San Francisco ever again. I don't know why they had him back at the game. I'm still mad at Spencer Burford. He's on the roster, and I wouldn't even allow him in San Francisco for letting Chris Jones go unblocked in the Super Bowl. That's a whole separate conversation. Good riddance to him. But, I mean, it makes me sick how the 49ers fucked this up. And what I mean by that is roster construction. You couldn't win with Brock on a rookie contract. Now you're paying him all this money, and now you have to draft well, because we look at the quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls being paid a lot of money. They're either elite, which Brock, maybe he's elite, but he's not Patrick Mahomes elite. So Patrick Mahomes, who else? Matt Stafford. Okay. But both far superior quarterbacks to Brock Purdy. I think we can all agree on that, even Brock fans. I don't care about the EPA or any of that shit. Just pure talent. Those guys are better. And Jalen Hurts. But why? Jalen Hurts is not a better quarterback than Brock Purdy. But like, why did they win a Super Bowl? Why? Howie Roseman dominated all of the first and second round picks on the trenches. That's how they won a Super Bowl, where Jalen was protected enough where he could play well in the Super Bowl. And the problem is the 49ers refused to do that for Brock Purdy. And that's why they lost the Super Bowl when Brock had the best year of his career. And he threw for 255 yards and played very well in the Super Bowl. And you could argue outplayed Patrick Mahomes. But because they refused to build around him in the trenches, they lost. The Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes played bad in a few Super Bowls, and it was both against the 49ers. I don't think he played that well. Why did they win? Trenches. Chris Jones, defensive line. The O-line was always great, Patrick Mahomes, when they were winning Super Bowls. I know people want to clown Jawan Taylor, but when he wasn't getting holding calls, they were as good of an offensive line as anybody in the league, right? That's why they won. You look at Denver, who was in the AFC Championship, elite trenches, elite O-line, elite D-line. And then you look at all of these elite teams, the Rams, better trenches, better D-line, better O-line. The 49ers have 39-year-old Trent Williams, and then they have nobody else on that line that can play football at a high level. And I like Colton McKivitz. I think for his contract, it's one of the better contracts in football. But if we're just talking about how the 49ers can get back to where Seattle is right now, it takes elite drafting. I just can't trust John Lynch to do it, because what have I seen from John Lynch? Jalen Hurd, Cam Latu in round 3, Michael Williams. Jury's still out on Michael, but I think that was a bad pick at the time. I'm going to stand on my point there. He's a good edge setter, but he can't rush the passer to save his fucking life, and he never has. And he's young, and I hope he'll learn, but I just don't love that he was picked over James Pierce just because he's bigger and can play the wide 9 scheme. Like, I didn't like that at the time. I wanted Walter Nolan. I'll stand on it. I know Walter Nolan got hurt this year. I would have rather had him, because I think he's just a Jalen Carter clone pretty much when he's healthy. He's great. And let's just look. Ricky Pearsall can't stay healthy to save his life. Cool. Didn't have picks for years because you traded 3 for Trey Lance, and that ruined the depth. Because now with Brock Purdy making money and you have no depth because you didn't have first-round picks for 3 years, in that same time frame, you were good. Seattle was bad, but Seattle had all these picks, and they dominated every single one. And John Schneider was on the freaking hot seat a few years ago. And it wasn't his fault. It was Pete Carroll's fault. It takes time to build a roster. They had Geno Smith at quarterback. Ryan Grubb made him look serviceable last year. So shout out Ryan Grubb, OC of Alabama, who I know Alabama fans hate, but I think he's a decent OC, really good OC. He had Geno throwing 4,500 yards last year almost. So, and Geno stinks, right? I think it's crazy the Vikings gave up on Sam Darnold. I think it's crazy the Niners let Sam Darnold walk originally. I would have just paid him the money to be the backup. I don't care. But now they have Mac Jones, so that's not that big of a deal. But it makes me sick that Seattle has all this success, that the Rams have all this success, that the 49ers still, it just seems like they're broken with this core. And I'm not saying they absolutely need to trade George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams. In fact, they're not going to get anything for Christian McCaffrey. I mean, at 300 touches, he's going to be 30 years old, and he's a running back with no burst anymore. He's a great pass catcher, but they wouldn't get anything in a trade for Christian McCaffrey. I think you got to start consider breaking up the core and retooling, because there's so much trauma in that core. They know they should have won a Super Bowl multiple times. They fucked up on every occasion, and it's broken. They're not the same. They can't overcome that trauma, and the roster construction so poor that it doesn't help, even when they had Robert Saleh at DC. And now they're going to have a far worse DC. I am very worried about the San Francisco 49ers. I think they can get back to the Super Bowl, but I think it requires things that we just haven't seen. And that is John Lynch drafting well, which he hasn't shown that he's been able to do the past few years. Kyle Shanahan adjusting. How was Sean McVay able to score 30 points on the fucking Seahawks? Elite defense. But Kyle, you scored how many points against the Seahawks all year? 23? 23. Give me a fucking break. And now I see why people want Kyle fired. And I love Kyle. I think I've been adamant about him being an all-time coach. But the fact of the matter is, he's the only coach that's coached 9+ seasons and hasn't won a Super Bowl with his respective organization. Still with him without being fired. And I think his pride is a devil. I mean, it's the biggest Achilles heel in the 49ers, other than John Lynch drafting, is Kyle refuses to adapt. Now, again, I want to see one more year against Mike McDonald defenses because he didn't have Brandon Ayuk. He didn't have any of these guys, right? Like they were all injured or not playing. Like Jawan Jennings ran a 5.440, right? Like he was slow as shit. Good guy to have on the team. Great blocker, slow as shit. No separators. That's why Brock threw all those picks over the middle because he had no separators. So I'm not blaming Brock for that. And I'm not blaming Kyle for that. But 6 fucking points against the Seahawks in the divisional round, 3 at home for a 1 seed. I mean, Mike McDonald has this guy. He's playing chess and Kyle Shanahan's playing checkers. And Sean McVay has proven to outcoach Kyle Shanahan too, all the time. And both of those coaches are in the fucking division. And that's the problem. So when I hear people saying, oh, San Francisco can get here, people say the window's closed. I'm not saying it's closed. I think it's wide open, but I think you need to dominate the draft. And I would not be opposed to moving on from John Lynch and having somebody come in that can actually draft and that isn't just charismatic, all-time great, wears a suit so you think he's smart like John Lynch. Because I'm sick and tired of him screwing everything up with this roster. He was able to get away with it because Brock Purdy saved his job after he botched the Trey Lance deal. And then he was able to get away with it because Brock Purdy was on a rookie contract. So even with all the misses and the lack of picks, they were able to spend money and go get a Javon Hargrave, go get a Chase Young, go get here and there some guys, Charvarius Ward, spend a lot of money on him, right? So again, I'm pissed as a Niner fan. I know Seattle fans. I have a lot of followers that are Seattle fans, and I know the ones that follow me are not bad fans. I have ran into a lot of Seattle fans that are very toxic that I do not like. But most of them I feel like are very passionate. They're very good fans. They love their team and they deserve it. And at the end of the day, in sports as fans, we can only root for what's best for our team. And maybe Seattle winning a Super Bowl at our home stadium would make John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan sick enough to actually have the balls to go do something, to go trade for Max Crosby, to go, do something, trade for Jordan Addison, do something, trade for Justin Jefferson, I don't give a fuck if they trade 2 picks for Justin Jefferson, do it. They're not going to be picking good players in those 2 first-round picks anyway, so do it. Go all in. Les Snead for the Rams said, fuck the picks. He went and got Matthew Stafford. They won a Super Bowl. Then what happened? Okay, these guys are old. Let's retool. They got younger players. They dominated on their drafts, and now they're back. So they're back to being good. Now, I know they didn't make it the Super Bowl, but that was because their secondary sucks, and they still have some retooling to do left, right? But they could absolutely be back there next year. I have no question the Rams and Seahawks will be excellent teams next season. Seattle's going to have a tough schedule, especially them if they win the Super Bowl. I mean, they obviously have played an extra game than everybody else. They're going to have a shorter off season, and we know about Super Bowl losers or Super Bowl winners the following season don't bode as well unless you're a dynasty like the Patriots or the Chiefs, right? So my point here is congratulations to the Seahawks. I'm not going to be the Niner fan that says, oh, fuck the Seahawks, whatever. Congratulations to the Patriots. Congratulations to the Rams for getting to the NFC Championship game. Congratulations to the NFC West for being the best division in football. And now the pressure's on John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And shout out Sam Darnold, USC legend, stepped up to the plate. The dude has fucking nuts. He stepped up when it mattered most. I have nothing but respect for that man. Nothing but respect. With that being said, I'm out of here. I just wanted to give my live reactions to the game. I'll be coming out with some 49ers and some draft content tomorrow, so make sure you're there for that. I know TikTok's been down, so I haven't been able to post as much because there's been bugs on TikTok. But make sure you're subbing to my YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you're following me on TikTok and X on Instagram. Shit, I might even start posting on Snapchat. Apparently, people are making money on Snapchat now. I don't have a Facebook. I only have a Facebook when I cross over between Instagram and Facebook. But I'm trying to monetize everywhere. I appreciate y'all. I love y'all. And hopefully John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan can get some constructive criticism from a rival winning a Super Bowl at their home stadium. With that, I'm out of here.